Hi, this is Darlene Griffiths, and I am talking about the case study A Good Teacher Turns Bad today. Just some background information about the elementary school that we're talking about. They have a nice staff of 18 teachers. It is an elementary school. The principal, Mrs. Wilson, has been a teacher before, and she became an administrator there 4 years ago. The school seems to be very proud of their students and their accomplishments. So category 1, problem identification. The problem I see is Mrs. Wilson, the principal. In year 1, she took her collegiate advice and she didn't rock the boat at Crestview. Then time progressed, and in year 3, she noticed a change in one of her teachers, Mrs. Horton. The other teachers let her know that Mrs. Horton was having some difficulties at home, and I don't think Mrs. Wilson went and addressed those things with Mrs. Horton. So then summer came, and Mrs. Wilson, the principal, just hoped that Mrs. Horton would resolve her personal issues and come back in the fall ready to go. So then we start year 4, and it's very obvious that Mrs. Horton's actions are getting worse instead of better. She didn't come back refreshed and renewed. She came back with a chip on her shoulder, basically. So they're introducing a new reading program, and this teacher just disagrees with it completely. She's arguing with the other teachers. She doesn't think that they should implement it. And then the principal holds this private meeting with that teacher to talk about these issues, and the teacher just basically ignores the reprimand, basically. So we're 6 weeks into year 4, and the principal's getting phone calls and letters from parents complaining about this teacher. And then the superintendent calls and says, hey, the parents are not getting the answers that they need from the teacher. What is going on with this teacher? And so Mrs. Wilson, the principal, sets up a parent meeting with a concerned parent and Mrs. Horton, and the meeting just goes south very quickly. So there are some serious issues going on here. So problem identification. What do I need to know about the principal, Mrs. Wilson? Well, first off, why didn't she address the issue with Mrs. Horton during year 3? Why did she just let it go and then hope over the summer that these issues would resolve themselves? Why didn't she confront Mrs. Horton when she got those phone calls and letters from parents? Why did she wait until the superintendent called her to go address the issue? The problems are not going to go away. She needed to deal with them. So the problem I see is with the principal. She waited too long to address these problems with Mrs. Horton. If she had dealt with them right away in year 3, she might not have the escalating problems that are going on in year 4. She needed to take action in year 3, go to Mrs. Horton, see what she could do to change her attitude or her perspective, give her some time off, maybe a few days to get her life back together, whatever she needed to do, so that in year 4 she could come back as a positive teacher rather than arguing with everybody. So my plan of action. If I were Mrs. Wilson, the principal, I would have intervened in year 3. I would not have waited until things got worse in year 4. I would have had a private meeting in year 3 when I noticed these changes with Mrs. Horton. I would have offered her empathy, yes, because I understood that she was having personal issues, but I want her to know that she's got to leave her personal issues at home when she walks through that door of that school. She's got to be a professional. And I would document any and all meetings that I had with Mrs. Horton. So then step 2, if I continue to see these negative behaviors out of the teacher, then I would meet with her again, probably at the end of year 3, say, I hope that you can get things worked out over the summer and come back in the fall at that teacher of the year caliber that you once were. If not, we're going to have to do some things in the fall. So here we are in year 4, and according to the case study, Mrs. Horton has not changed. She's gotten worse. She's arguing with the other teachers. Even after a private conference with the principal, she has total disregard for what the principal is asking her to do as far as implementing their new reading program and not arguing with curriculum decisions and arguing with the other teachers. So I would set up a formal evaluation and some walkthroughs to see what's going on also in the classroom, especially if I'm getting those letters and calls from parents saying, my kid's being verbally abused, they're being embarrassed in class, they're not sleeping. I would definitely be in that classroom seeing what's going on. And hopefully I'm going to see the issue, although a lot of teachers can put on a good dog and pony show to cover things up. I would hope that I would be visiting that classroom often enough to see what's going on. And once I realize that these concerns are valid, I would want to offer Mrs. Horton some opportunities to improve. Maybe this is her first year teaching first grade, so maybe she needs to go see another first grade classroom, offer her some opportunities for improvement by visiting another classroom, seeing how another teacher does it in the district or in a neighboring district. Maybe go to some professional development on how to deal with stress. I mean, stress, we have it in our personal lives, in our professional lives. How do I deal with that? Maybe even talk to the PE teacher about what are some exercises that the teacher and the students can do to de-stress during the day, to keep things so that we're not yelling at our children, we're not embarrassing them, we are staying calm and producing that environment where learning can occur. And then I would reevaluate in the spring to check on Mrs. Horton. Is she, after she's gone to these professional development things, is she improving? Is things getting better? And if not, I'm going to have to let her go. She is, like you say, a bad apple can spoil the whole batch. If she is not improving and doing what needs to be done, I'm going to have to let her go. So, to resolve the issues, what's best for the students? Well, obviously the students in Mrs. Horton's class need to have those concerns addressed immediately, okay, for their safety, for their learning, for their well-being. I would not move the students. I would hope that the teacher would make improvements, and I would check on those improvements to make sure that they're being implemented. I would talk to the students because you get the most truth from those elementary kids. They'll tell you what's going on. They're not going to skirt around the issue. They're just going to tell you how it is. And then before those parents send those texts and those phone calls and those letters to me or even to board members, I would encourage that teacher to meet with those parents, have that conversation, reply to that email. If she's having trouble with having those parent-teacher conferences, then maybe we need to do a mock parent-teacher conference and just practice. Make sure she's prepared for those and she knows what she's going to say. And then to debrief. Well, my first emotion was to relate to the teacher. And then I started thinking, what about the principal here? And so the teacher just terribly misbehaving, not acting professionally, acting like a little spoiled child who's not getting her way. And even after the principal meets with her and discusses this, the behavior continues. And so I would want to put a stop to this before it infects the entire school. Just that climate can go from good to bad really quickly when one person is just upset all the time, and it brings everybody else down. Students, faculty, staff, everybody can feel that. Then there were some unresolved issues. I would want to encourage Mrs. Horton, the teacher, to separate her professional life from her personal life. When she walks into that school door, personal life is at home, professional life is right here. It's up to her. Is she going to improve or is she not going to improve? That's her decision. And then I would have to decide as the leader, am I going to keep her or am I going to have to let her go? And some of that decision is based on, well, did she implement that reading program that she disagreed with, or did she just dig in her heels and not do it? So is she trying to improve and trying to get back to that Teacher of the Year caliber, or is she just like, I'm done and we need to let her go? So how would I promote academic success? Well, as you know, every classroom should have a caring teacher, someone that can nurture those students and produce that learning environment so everyone can learn, so everyone feels safe. When there's that verbal abuse and that embarrassment, it's not a learning environment. It is a poisonous environment where things are not working. Students feel that. They take it home to their parents. Parents feel that. They know when things are working and when they're not. And then if I want to have an effective implementation of that new reading program, I have to be sure that everyone is on board. Not just a few teachers over here and a few teachers over here disagreeing with it, but everybody working together to make sure that that gets implemented effectively for all the students. And then for the students' sake, I want to address issues immediately, especially with Mrs. Horton. Here she was a Teacher of the Year, and things have just gone south really fast. I want to address that and get that taken care of. I need to be able to have a team mentality with my faculty so that they are working together toward our goals. One bad apple, like I said, can just ruin the whole batch. I need to either fix that bad apple or get rid of it. And then I want to visit with students. They're going to tell me, are things getting better? Are things getting worse? Are things staying the same? How are things going? And then to enhance instructional capacity. Again, address issues immediately. Don't hope that they go away or wish that they go away. Address them immediately. I want to build that faculty that works together. If we're not working together to meet our goals, then we're not going to meet those goals. I want to visit with students, see what their perspectives are. I want to offer professional development that fits the needs of the teachers. Okay, for Mrs. Horton, it had to deal with stress at home and at work. It had to deal with, how do I treat my kids? How do I leave my personal life at home? And that professional development sometimes just has to be personalized for each individual teacher, as well as professional development for the building as a whole. But for Mrs. Horton, it needed to be personalized. And then I want to involve those parents in a positive way. They were not having a good experience with Mrs. Horton, and I want them to see that she has improved and she's doing better. And I want them to know that they can have a positive interaction with her as well as the school. Thank you for listening, and I hope to see you in another class. Thanks.